And Senate reverses decision on Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Mode of transmission of results and voting now left to INEC.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the fallout of the midterm ministerial performance review.
And as the midterm ministerial retreat ends, indications are coming out that a more effective monitoring and implementation strategy will be visible in all government assignments in Nigeria. Now, that is precisely because of one facility. That's the introduction of a performance management system dashboard, which will track or is expected to track projects real time with live data, and is expected, of course, to assist in improving on the job of national development with special focus on enhanced security, fight against corruption, and transformation of the economy.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari, who sat through a 2-day retreat for ministers and permanent secretaries, gave assurance that the gaps in the system would be addressed with renewed vigor and synergy. And this is, of course, to strengthen the administration. He also indicated that the second Niger bridge, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja, Kaduna, Zaria, and Kano Expressway, the East-West Road, and the ongoing rail projects across the country under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund would be completed during the second term of his administration.
And the president also challenged the Defense Ministry on the production of weapons locally, and also drew attention to Nigeria's GDP, which rose from 0.8% in 2017 to 5.1% in the second quarter of 2021. Now, a critical directive was also issued by the president to the secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, for commencement of mandatory quality coordinated meetings with all ministries in, of course, the 9 priority areas.
Now, emphasis was also placed on the synergy between fiscal and monetary authorities, the mandatory commencement of all relevant government ministries involved in the National Single Window Project, as well as removal of bottlenecks to enable MSMEs access funds much more easily.
And the gains of the recently signed petroleum industry bill, of course, was also mentioned, as well as plans for increased crude oil production, reduction in crude oil theft, and concerted efforts targeted at making refineries under repairs to be functional. Now, the fallouts of the midterm ministerial performance review will be our focus, or the focus of our conversation, as usual, on today's edition of the program. We have all our guests, very interesting guests, to speak to the issues arising from that retreat. And it's on this note, I welcome you to the program. It's Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live from our station here in Abuja. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program, reaching you live on a network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we bring you some of our complimentary segments. For now, here is our colleague Musbah Udanwahab with the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
Very good morning, Kingsley. Trust me, you have another interesting topic there as usual. But for now, let's take the news. Cabinet members, ministers and permanent secretaries are being directed to work assiduously and in synergy towards total delivery of set targets of a present administration aimed at improving the livelihood of all Nigerians. President Muhammadu Buhari gave a directive at the end of a 2-day ministerial performance review retreat, said robust performance culture should also be promoted across NTAs.
Discussions at the retreat have prompted the need for us to ramp up implementation on the deliverables. We must close the gaps in our implementation efforts to ensure that we attain set targets by 2023. The Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation is to immediately begin the process of convening quarterly coordination meetings for each priority area based on the collaborative results framework.
And contrary to insinuations, in some quarters, the Nigerian economy is more diversified than the outside world thinks. Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, disclosed this while addressing participants of a midterm ministerial performance review retreat in Abuja.
Be a manufacturing hub for the African Continental Free Trade Area. If companies here can produce for a population of 200 million people, they can do so for a unified market of 1.3 billion. One sector where this is particularly urgent is pharmaceutical and vaccine production, where it has become painfully clear that the continent needs to increase its own manufacturing capacity. Nigeria could become a hub for supplying vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics to the continent and the world. Manufacturing solar panels, producing goods based on the use of renewable energy should be an area Nigeria should plan to enter. The country must go green, not only for its large population, but also to take advantage of export prospects in Africa.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Now, away from that, the presidency has reacted to a media publication that allegedly misrepresents the position of a vice president, Yemi Osinbajo, on a call for devaluation that the naira exchange rate was being kept artificially low. The statement makes it clear that the vice president is not calling for the devaluation of the naira. Rather, he has at all times argued against an arbitrary devaluation of the naira. The position of the vice president was that currently the naira exchange rate benefits only those who are able to obtain the dollar at 410 naira, some of whom simply turn around and sell to the parallel markets at 570 naira. Such a massive difference discourages doing proper business. And from the National Assembly, senators reversed its decision on the 2010 Electoral Act Amendment Bill passed in July this year, which mostly centered on voting and transmission of results. The Senate rescinded its decision on 4 clauses.
43 now makes provision for acceptance of electronic voting machine.
I don't see any reason why anybody should be afraid of direct primary. It helps the people who are members of your party to feel wanted.
And the House of Representatives has approved reports on bills seeking the establishment of development commissions for the southeast and southwest of Nigeria. The consideration of reports on the 2 bills featured the merits of the bill.
Receive and manage funds from allocation of the Federation for the rehabilitation, reconstruction, and reparation for houses and lost businesses of victims of the Civil War.
For the reconstruction and rehabilitation of roads, houses, and other infrastructural damages suffered by the region.
Nigerian Customs Service will soon be impounding privately owned jets and aircraft operating in the country without customs due certification. Customs Public Relations Officer Joseph Atta said this while briefing journalists in Abuja on the update of the ongoing verification of import document for privately owned aircraft exercise.
We are found wanting in the areas of duty payment. They are liable to duty payment. They have been issued demand notices, and we are now giving them 14 days within which to come and make payments. And then we have 62 who have not showed up, and we have already collected their numbers from the appropriate authority, which means we know they exist, they should come. Our patience is elastic, but there will be a limit, and those who choose to default will be made to face the wrath of the law.
That's just a bit of the news for now. We'll bring you more in the course of the day. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue in just a moment with Claire and Kingsley. Stay with us.
The center is purposely established in order to provide these services that are examinations, medical examinations and investigations that were not provided for in Kano as well as the entire Northwest region. It's equipped with modern technological equipment in terms of radiological services. We have MRI 1.5 Tesla, we have digital X-ray as well as 4D ultrasound equipment. The importance of the center cannot be overemphasized. Just within 1 year, the center attended to thousands and numerous patients as well as medical examinations. NKDC is established in order also to provide these healthcare facilities as a discounted price.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hey there, what's on your bucket list? Would you like to travel the world, live your best life? What if I told you you could blow right this minute and do everything on that list? Airtel is saying thank you to all loyal customers. You stand a chance to win up to 100 million naira with guaranteed cash tokens in the Airtel Recharge and Blow promo. How awesome is that? All you have to do is recharge to win. For more information, dial *444*4# to enter for the draw. Everyone's a winner, so hurry now. The more you recharge, the more you win.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Give your kids winning energy. Milo Active Go. With the goodness of malts, milk, and cocoa, helps them make the most of every day. Milo, the energy to go further.
Manchester City returned from the international break with a tricky tie against Burnley at the Etihad Stadium. Will they get their desired victory? Find out this Saturday when Manchester City take on Burnley on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
Right, welcome back. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Niger on the network service. Let's take a look at business news that are trending. And Bank and Other Financial Institution Act, BOFIA, to reinvigorate the banking sector and also stabilize the financial system. That's the lead story coming from Comfort Amudo's portfolio on business news.
Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele says the Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act, BOFIA, has made the financial sector stable and the judiciary has a role to play in its operationalization and implementation. The Apex Bank Governor, represented by his deputy Aisha Ahmed, said the act is expected to reinvigorate the banking sector and engender a sound and stable financial system that will support sustainable growth and development in the country.
We've been having a series of engagements on how we should operationalize and implement this provision, whilst the Act was very specific as to how it should be run and the framework. But you agree with me that we need the strong participation of the judiciary coming up with a platform and a program that works. So we look forward to actually putting all the plans that we've been discussing into fruition.
To raise awareness of the strides made towards industrializing the country and highlighting the various activities being implemented, the federal government has concluded plans to host a 4-day Nigerian Industrialization Summit in November. The Ministry of Budget and National Planning says the proposed summit is also intended to showcase how Nigeria can feed, clothe and house self with focus on the Special Industrial Processing Zones initiative.
We have reached an inflection point in our country that we have to turn things around. And we believe strongly that using agro-industry, agribusiness as the base is the way that we can do this.
We are also focusing on concentric diversification strategies, especially in agriculture, that can deliver sustained, job-intensive and inclusive growth.
And in the capital markets, investors gained 95.46 billion. The all-share index increased by 0.45%. Market closed at 40,896.96 basis points, while equity capitalization is 21.3 trillion naira. 563.8 million shares valued at 5.095 billion naira exchange hands in 4,253 deals. With Business News, Comfort Amodu.
Thank you very much, Comfort Amodu, for the business package. Coming up next is Newspaper Review.
All right, we're very glad to have Bayo Atuebe with us this morning. Yesterday, you were caught up in the traffic, you said?
Yes, indeed. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, good to see you. Okay, let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Immediately below the name flag, you have the headline, Importers Using Chemicals Meant to Preserve Corpses for Food Preservation. And this is according to NAFDAC. And the alarm, of course, is over the use of formalin to preserve frozen poultry products. And the agency has warned Nigerians to avoid patronizing such products. NAFDAC spokesman said that some unscrupulous business persons were using the formalin, particularly in preserving chicken and turkey for a longer shelf life. Nigeria's education system in a shambles despite gulping 3.56 trillion naira in 6 years. That's the lead story. And you have a number of riders to that. Recurrent and capital expenditures got the amount stated there. Nigeria yet to meet UNESCO benchmark of 26%, and experts call for increase in education budget. Well, that rider there, the second one, Bayo and Claire, is misleading to say that Nigeria yet to meet UNESCO benchmark of 26%. We've had experts on Good Morning Nigeria state clearly that there is nowhere in any UNESCO paper, in any UNESCO provision, where it is stated that countries should budget 26% annually for education. Professor Peter Okebukola, who is the former Vice Chancellor of Lagos State University and also former Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission, has been a guest on Good Morning Nigeria and has addressed this issue of saying there should be a benchmark, a UNESCO benchmark of 26%. It is misleading. All right, Reps OK Development Commissions for Southeast and Southwest. And also there, Ataga's mother, I'm not guilty, Chidinma tells court. MDA is to spend 772 million on photocopy machines. Electoral Amendment Act, that's the kicker. Senate bows to pressure, reverses self and transmission of results. INEC, Wike, and Atiku applaud lawmakers. Oshibajo didn't call for devaluation of Naira. That's according to the presidency. Claire.
Yes, thank you. I want to believe that UNESCO's 26% is only advisory, and in that state, it's not binding on countries to benchmark. But it is desirable.
There is no. Well, the point is there is no 26% prescribed by UNESCO or indicated as an advisory to governments around the world. Any government, of course, can choose to go beyond that.
Beijing, there was affirmative action.
There was
a
affirmative
percentage.
action. Yes.
What he's saying, therefore, is that there's no such prescription by UNESCO, but people bandied figures around, which has no source. One of such examples was given by Minister of Housing, Babatunde Fashola, when he said that people were saying there's a housing deficit of
17 million deficit.
And he said he fact-checked that, and there was no source. They attributed it to World Bank, and World Bank, there's no document showing where World Bank has indicated that. People just bandied figures around.
And when you say the educational system is also in a shambles, despite gulping 3.56 trillion, these are figures coming from the Federal Ministry of Education. So states also have their educational budgets. So what do we know about the state's budget for education? What do we know precisely?
Holistically.
Yes. What do we also know about local governments, because they're in charge of primary education?
Kinsley, that's the gap in data. Because if we have accurate data, then we'll be able to plan, correctly. Yes. So there are gaps in education data, and there are gaps in other areas that we also need this kind of data to plan ahead. So it is very important, and I'm happy that there is a performance dashboard, which will probably, henceforth, give Mr. President, an eye view of the data in terms of performance indices in the different sectors. So, well, let's hope that will address the issue of data gap. But let me take the lead story on the front page of The Nation. It's on the Senate's decision to reverse itself yesterday on the matter of electronic transfer of results. And it's captioned its version this way: Senate, we bowed to public on e-transmission of results. And it comes with the rider, Wike, Oye, Ekweremadu, law decision. INEC will wait for president's assent. So that's the nation's, that's how the nation captured, the president's explanation of what had happened. Baya, what's your take on that caption?
Well, this was the contention. There was disagreement between the Senate and the House of Representatives. But when it came to concurrence, the Senate yesterday now looked at section clause 52, subsection 3 of the Executive Bill, Electoral Bill 2021. And what they now have is that, subject to section 63 of the bill, voting at election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Independent National Electoral Commission. So INEC can continue to transfer or transmit election results. Before, there was a clause that prescribed or limited INEC from using electronic means of transmitting results. The other clause that was also of contention was clause 52.3, and it's now reading that a political party seeking to nominate candidates for election under this bill shall hold direct primaries for aspirants to elective positions, which shall be monitored by the Commission.
But INEC seems to be, I don't know, the body movement of INEC, if you gauge from what it says here, we will wait for president's assent. There seems to be...
Of course, that's for the complete process. The bill now has been passed by, it is wait for concurrence. The two chambers will pass it. It will go to Mr. President. It is when Mr. President assents that it becomes law.
Isn't it almost certain?
Well,
that will happen.
Don't count your eggs before they are hatched. But the good news...
I was just wondering, because this is a major departure from what previously occurred. The primaries conducted by parties were usually twofold. It could be either of them. either direct primaries or indirect primaries.
And then later on consensus came in.
No. There's no consensus that is recognized, because that is usually, I'm talking about primaries for election, not primaries to fill your executive council positions for political parties. Now, it's a sea change in the sense that the provision in the bill now stipulating direct primaries is intended to cure what has been a malaise amongst the political parties through indirect primaries. What it means is that in direct primaries, the members of the political parties, that is, the registered members of the political parties, will be the ones to choose the candidates. Of course, it means you have a larger number to manage. And then they will say, this is our candidate, and then the candidate goes. But in indirect primaries, it is the delegates who have purportedly been chosen by their constituent members of the party to represent them at the delegates conference or the delegates convention or otherwise. But what has happened over the years, particularly since 1999, is that those delegates for the indirect primaries are usually handpicked. And then it is also alleged that the delegates can often also be manipulated, which is why you have this see and buy syndrome at the primaries level, to say it is, for example, if it is at the state level, the claim is that it is the governor who would normally vet the list of the delegates who would go for that election, and then they pick the candidates that they have determined them to pick. So this one is to empower the registered members of the political parties. The question then is, it also affects the party management structure. How organized are the political parties?
Yes,
do you have an up-to-date register of your financial members as of your political party, so that I cannot wake up today and say, in the morning I belong to party XYZ, then in the evening I belong to party ABC. How do I prove that I am a registered and qualified member of your party to vote at your primaries?
But Kingsley, I ask, is it democratic? Is that a democratic process?
Yes.
Which one?
Yes, the direct primaries. Is it a democratic process?
It's the most democratic.
It's democratic, but it has its challenges. Every member of the party registered, as he indicated, is required to come and vote, and so it's the most democratic.
It's not.
There's good news coming from.
Bayo, sorry to cut you. In some jurisdictions, say in the US, for instance, where you have direct primaries, you can also have open primaries. Open primaries means that it is not just the registered members of the political parties. Other persons who don't belong to that political party can also participate in the primaries. But that's not what we are getting into.
Well, I'm giving you the good news that is coming from Yauri. Students of the Federal Government College Birin Yauri, who were abducted from the school on 17th of June, there are news now that they have been released.
All of them?
All of them have been released. Presently, they are being expected to be received in Birnin Kebbi. One of the father of the students broke the news to Daily Trust. You will recall that they were abducted. About 90 of them were said to have been abducted, with 3 staff, including the vice principal. Immediately after it, some soldiers went in and were able to rescue some. But all this while, it has been very difficult, because the abductors said they didn't want any ransom. They wanted some members of their group who had been arrested to be released. And that was why they held on the students. And if they released them as at yesterday, it means they have stayed for 118 days. And with that development, we have now overcome the abduction of students at Kankara, Jangebe, Greenfield University, Federal Forest College at Afaka, Nuhu Bamali, Kagara, Tegina, and Islamia Primary School. Presently, the only ones that I held are 4 students of Bethel Baptist.
And the latest abduction from the seminary.
Yes, the seminary.
Yes. Let me quickly run through the other stories on the front page. And still on the midterm ministerial retreat, ministers face quarterly performance appraiser. That's also coming out from the retreat, which ended yesterday. Now, government spends 30% of forex in petroleum products importation. Now, the rider shortage persists because of low exports, says the African Development Bank, AFDB, also coming from the retreat yesterday. RFI presents budget. We also have 48 suspects paraded over kidnapping and armed robbery. Let me quickly take you just above the head, the nameplates. 2 Zamfara lawmakers suspended over ties with bandits. Custom duties, 91 private jets risk forfeiture. Agency clears 57. It's on page 8. And soldiers shot, many injured in Abuja rally shooting. Bandits abduct 3 in Catholic church attack. Stories can be found on pages 3, 3, 8, and 5. And okay, the picture story there is the picture of the stalwart Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and former state governors or governors from Ogun, and at the Bodilon Ikoyi residence of the APC chieftain yesterday.
Well, let's start with the story from Zamfara. The Zamfara State House of Assembly has suspended 2 honorable members over alleged ties with bandits. They were Honorable Yusuf Muhammad and also representing Anka, as well as Honorable Ibrahim Tukur representing Bakura. They are to appear before the House Committee on Ethics and Privileges. Meanwhile, they have been disrobed of their chairmanship of committees they had. Also in Adamawa State, Adama Police Command has rescued the woman and her daughter who were abducted when the criminals attacked Unguroje police station in Yola local government area. The police took the war to the kidnappers' hideout and they abandoned the woman and the daughter, and they were rescued unhurt. The other developments about that also relate to the prelate of the Methodist Church of Nigeria, Dr. Samuel Kanu Uche, says he supports amnesty for Boko Haram and bandits. He says peace is not the absence of a problem, but peace is a successful management of problems so that they don't resort to crisis. He was emphatic that insurgents have leaders. Rather than criticize Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, we should be positive and engage others. He ended by saying, these boys are being used by disgruntled politicians, adding that if you engage them and be paying them 25,000 monthly, they will not kidnap, and all they want is food. He declared, I support amnesty for them. If you declare amnesty, as it was done for Niger Delta region people, which quelled tension. He also added that there should be amnesty for Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Adeyomo. So
well, the governors in the Northwest have already indicated that they are not up for amnesty any longer, because they offered an olive branch to the bandits, and what we saw was an escalation in incidents of banditry and kidnapping, and which is why the latest security measures were kicked in, including the disruption of telecommunication services in appropriate locations. But what is worrisome is the news from the Zamfara State House of Assembly, where 2 members of the House have been suspended, allegedly, because of their connection to bandits. What happens in terms of law enforcement? There have also been reports in the past of allegations linking some traditional rulers in some of the states to banditry. So what has happened in terms of law enforcement? It is not just sufficient to announce this and then everybody goes to sleep. If those persons are in there, then of course the security agencies have first intelligence to work with, take up the gentlemen or the ladies, whoever they are, and then get them to face the law.
You remember the story that came up about an Islamic school in Gama, Kwara State, where students were mercilessly flogged?
That's right.
The Kwara State government has appointed a 10-member committee headed by a retired justice of Sharia Court of Appeal to probe the beating of the students of that Islamic school. Initially, they had to visit the school, and the Commissioner for Education had visited the school, and she had directed that the student should be given medical attention. The committee is charged to review the reward and disciplinary method in schools and make recommendations to Kwara State government to avoid such other things.
For how long had such practices been going on? It is possible that some of those students, had earlier been flogged and they kept quiet. So who was giving the instructions? I know that. What is the qualification of the teachers? What kind of reorientation programs do they need to undergo? But it's a useful thing that the Kwara State government has taken this up. But if the parents they choose to, they can, of course, take the school authorities to court.
There is an interesting story, and it's on the inside page.
Sure,
I'd just like to mention it. Maybe Bayo would have a word or two. Ex-NIMASA DG others spent intelligence gathering funds on massage chairs.
Massage chairs.
Well, that story is coming from the proceedings of a court. So the matter is sub judice.
Therefore,
that deposition was by a witness. The trial is ongoing.
Clear?
I just mentioned it.
Clear? So no comment.
No comment. I didn't ask you to say anything.
No, you said you might have a comment.
No. Okay, sorry. I withdraw that. I withdraw that.
You want me to be charged with contempt of court?
No, we will arraign you almost immediately. That will be contempt ex facie.
Kinsley, anyway, thank you, Kinsley. Kinsley is the lawyer here, so I'm protected. We are always protected. Kinsley, thank you.
No, well, fine, thanks.
Yes.
But I think that this alarm raised by NAFDAC about the use of formalin to preserve poultry products and so on and so forth, unscrupulous. It is good that you are advising the public, but what is it that you have done on your own?
Yes.
It is not sufficient. Look, okay, how else are we supposed to get poultry products? It's not everybody that can go and buy a live chicken or buy live turkey, get it dressed and so on and so forth. So you get this and say it's frozen in top supermarkets around the various parts of the country. You have them. So have you done spot checks to say, look, okay, we enter into a supermarket, we go into cold rooms, these are the poultry products we saw, and we found that they were preserved by formalin. Take them out if they're not fit for human consumption, and then destroy them.
In fact,
have you done that?
Before identifying that formaldehyde is being used, NAFDAC had come with an alarm that people should be careful about frozen turkey, frozen chicken.
Yes, and
it's still about that. But like you pointed out, it is their duty because they are supposed to be the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration, and without their approval, such other imported chicken and stock that are preserved with formaldehyde won't get into the country.
Bayo, we have given you 20 good minutes.
It's compensation for the other days. Thank you very much.
Have a good day, Bayo.
You too.
All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. We'll be right back to begin our conversation.
The federal government, through NPHCDA, commenced Phase 2 vaccination of all persons 18 years and above with safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines approved by WHO and certified by NAFDAC. Special arrangement has been made for staff, their dependents and retirees of ministries, departments and agencies of government, private corporate organizations and non-governmental organizations. To benefit from this special arrangement, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng/corporate vaccination to obtain, fill and submit the Google form. NPHCDA will contact you within 48 hours. Protect yourself, your family and your workplace against COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccines are free, safe and effective. For further inquiries, call 0700-220-1122 or send a mail to covid19.vaccination@nphcda.gov.ng. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
Dear customer, link your Airtel number to your national identification number today. Here are easy ways you can do it. Dial *121*1# on your Airtel line and follow the prompts on the screen. Type in your 11-digit government-approved NIN number. You will receive a confirmation message to confirm your entry. You can also visit www.airtel.com.ng/NIN to link your phone number to your NIN. If you do not know your NIN, simply dial *346# to get it. No stress, no wahala.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
I dey enjoy Nollywood film, Orisun, PBO, AMC be my best channel. But ST Nollywood Plus dey show the latest Nollywood blockbuster on top classic bouquet. How I wan take watch am?
My pikin dey enjoy 5 children's channels, but e wan come add DreamWorks on top am.
I be telenovela lover and I like ST Novella E
and Star Life. But I hear say the series on ST Novella E Plus on top classic bouquet. The totori person pass waiting I dey see now. And I won't watch am. Shall I go need pay 800 naira extra?
From September 1, Star Times, they summer you better package. But no fear, we no increase price. Join this offer. Make basic bouquet subscribers just pay for 1 month and then go fit to watch 3 Ogbonge extra channels from Classic Bouquet. This awoof never finish. Recharge Classic or Super Bouquet for 1 month and you fit be one of the 400 lucky people them. We go win smartphone. Terms and conditions, they shall. More value, same price. Star Times, enjoy digital life.
Manchester City returned from the international break with a tricky tie against Burnley at the Etihad Stadium. Will they get their desired victory? Find out this Saturday when Manchester City take on Burnley on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
The broadcast media ecosystem is dynamic and requires continuous training for practitioners to perform optimally. NTA TV College JOS invites relevant officers to the following specially packaged training programs. Archival Management System in the Broadcast Media, date 11th October to 29th October 2021, 3 weeks. Intermediate Presentation Techniques, date 11th October to 22nd October 2021, 2 weeks. Digital Satellite, Microwave, and RF Technologies, date 11th October to 15th October 2021, 1 week. Advanced Broadcast Accounting and Auditing, date 25th October to 5th November 2021, 2 weeks. Photojournalism and Photography, date 8th November to 26th November 2021, 3 weeks. Transmitter Operation and Maintenance, date 1st November to 5th November 2021, 1 week. The course fee for the 3-week course is 130,000 naira per participant, while the fee for the 2-week course and the 1-week engineering courses is 100,000 naira only per participant, accommodation inclusive. The venue for all courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. For more information, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
Okay, welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and our conversation this morning will be on the outcome of the midterm ministerial performance review. And as we told you earlier on, President Muhammadu Buhari has given cabinet ministers and indeed permanent secretaries and head of agencies the march to redouble their efforts, of course, to meet the administration set targets in the 9 key priority areas, of course, including infrastructure, social inclusion and poverty eradication, renewable energy, and education, making sure that we have quality access to quality education and, of course, improved healthcare services. But just before we begin our conversation, let's listen into Abdul Salam Jubril's backgrounder.
It is already 2 years, 4 months, 13 days and counting into President Muhammadu Buhari's second term in office, and his lieutenants saddled with the responsibility of carrying out his vision recently underwent a performance appraisal. This was at a 2-day midterm retreat which ended yesterday. The retreat was attended by ministers, permanent secretaries, and other top government officials. The third in the series, the retreat gives ministers and heads of agencies the opportunity to present their performance records as well as show whether they conform with the overall objectives of the administration. Sitting through the 2-day sessions, a key outcome of the retreat was the President's unveiling of a digital performance management system, PMS, and dashboard that will help track government projects across the country in real time. The President urged ministers to work closely with permanent secretaries to ensure accelerated and effective delivery of the programs and projects. in their respective primary area of focus.
All issues relating to the implementation of the ministerial mandates must be taken seriously towards the attainment of the laudable objectives of our government.
The President used the occasion to highlight some of the federal government's notable achievements in the last 2 years in the areas of infrastructure, transportation, economy, electricity supply, and the petroleum industry, among others. At the close of the retreat, the President assured Nigerians that his administration will continue to implement measures that will improve domestic revenue to build a more resilient economy, as well as the sustenance of the social investment programs in the coming years, among others.
I therefore charge all of you to step up, double your efforts, and work in synergy towards total delivery of our administration's set target.
Beyond the 2-day midterm ministerial performance review retreat in Abuja, the nation's capital, can the deliverables be achieved in less than 2 years to the expiration of the administration? Guests on the program will be speaking on fallouts from the 2-day ministerial retreat, which ended on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Salam Jubril, for that backgrounder. Now, with us in the studios to discuss this, let's welcome the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. That's Malam Garba Shehu. Malam Garba, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Of course, just to add that we are indeed expecting 2 ministers who were at the ministerial retreat, Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Pantami, as well as Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Timipre Seva. We've actually invited them, so we do hope that they will join us before the end of our conversation. Madam Garba, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
And as always, so we'll start with your evaluation. Now, that retreat was to evaluate, the progress made in terms of meeting up deliverables in the different mandates and the priority areas. Evaluating performance, what was the outcome of the retreat?
Well, let me begin by saying that, the retreat has a history of its own, because shortly before he inaugurated them as ministers, President Muhammadu Buhari held this sort of retreat at which he read out mandates, and you started by articulating some of them, 9 in all, deliverables, and these 9 were shared out, or ministries were grouped in accordance with the relevance and the contributions each would be making to the key points that have been. And the president from the beginning said there will be scientific evaluation of delivery to determine who is delivering and who is not, ministers and permanent secretaries, because they are the leaders of the ministries. And he warned then that there will be consequences in case of failure to deliver. And so therefore, this retreat had a uniqueness of its own, because it wasn't just about government leaders. No, there was a huge presence of the private sector. So the sense is that if this country is good, it shouldn't be only for public servants. It's also good for business and private sector. It's our responsibility to come together and manage things. So in every facet, in all of the interfaces, the private sector and government leaders, came together and deliberated on these things. You talked about evaluation and delivery of. I think that it was done at 2 levels. At the level of the government, on the overall, reports were presented on how far have we come. And I must say that these assessments were done by independent, very credible institutions. We are talking about audit institutions like the KPMG, you know, and the leaders in civil society. So they did the assessment and they gave the government on the overall a healthy pass mark. We didn't get 100%, but something very respectable. And then the ministries then were then assessed. And let me say again that the assessment itself was not done from top, you know, without their involvement. Ministers themselves were, in a way, examined. Somebody said they were given frog jumps, but that's not the whole idea. They were involved in the assessment because they had questionnaires that they were given, and they had returned all of their responses. And then you had, so the ranking of the achievements in line with the 9 points of the achievement. Success in those areas, in any of those elements, was recorded as green. Somewhere in between, neither here nor there, amber, yellow, and the red in a situation where failure is determined or non-delivery is established. Now, let me again say that the thing about the red may not be there because a minister did not do or is a failure, but that maybe probably they didn't get funding for what they wanted to do. So in fairness to them, you know. So what we then had was, after all of the presentations, in effect, ministers were called to account. So they sat you down, you know, groups and, you know, panels, and then they asked questions. So on this matter, we got you A, B, C, D, E, you are on green. G, H, yellow. X, Y, Z, red, Y. And then explanations were offered. And then remedies, because the thing is, the whole thing was driven towards finding solutions. So it's not essentially a blame game thing, but also to see then how do we make the required impact between now and the end of the term, which is just 17 months to go.
What kind of questions were included in the questionnaires to the ministers?
No,
did you have an idea?
I am not a minister, so I didn't see the questionnaire. But I am fully aware that they were given questionnaires so that they reported on their own performances. And they were evaluated on what they reported. Of course, given that it is a scientific also examination, field workers were also there, because if you say that this is a concrete bridge, it shouldn't be a wooden bridge. So these things are examined, and the reporting was so covered all ends.
Managaba, of the 9 mandate areas, which ones were green in terms of the evaluation?
No, the thing is not, because under the 9, you know, blocks that you will call them. For instance, you are dealing with, let me say this one. If you say expand transportation and infrastructure for development, under this you are going to likely have Ministry of Works and Housing, you are likely going to have Ministry of Water Resources, Minister of Transportation, and some others. So therefore, the thing then is that, that delivery was measured on broken down to units. Not that the assessment was on the basis of each block of assignment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. No, each one was broken down into assignments given to ministries A, B, C. For instance, and the thing to do, I'm trying to avoid the disclosure because, one, all of the discussions were under confidential circumstances. And maybe if the government wants to reveal who scored A, B, C, the SGF or the president himself will be doing that. But there are areas that are very obvious, for instance. one of the points is to improve energy efficiency, meaning electricity and petroleum resources. And so much has been achieved, all of the reforms in the oil sector and so on. But obviously, the obvious questions may be asked. Why do we have to still import fuel, for the industry? Or even power. Look at the Siemens, the Siemens contract issued by the government. And, of course, close supervision of the leaders of the two countries, Germany and Nigeria, Angela Merkel, who has just left, and President Muhammadu Buhari, coming together to say, we're giving you Siemens, let them go and help you with power in your country, which is really something that is of a major concession to the country. If you follow that agreement signed between the two countries, this country would by now have been distributing about 7,500 megawatts of electricity. And by 2015, it would have gone to 25,000 megawatts and so on. 7,500 in 2 years from now, 10,000, and then 25,000. As we speak today, we are not on that 7,500. Yes, generation has grown phenomenally, about 13,000, 14,000 megawatts distribution to our homes, factories, and we are not there yet. So obviously, questions would be asked: why did we not get there?
Is it not fairly obvious? Because I imagine that at the ministerial retreat, 2 cabinet seats were empty. The Minister of Power, who was fired, and the Minister of Agriculture, who was also fired.
Yeah, well, this is why the ministers who are sitting in those positions today had the difficult task of coming forward to speak on those elements, when in fact they were not there when all of these things happened. I think that the assessment was benchmarked at June, because it's a media thing, halfway through the second term. So they were not there when all of the efficiency to deliver or the failure to deliver had happened. So yes, you are right to say that more or less empty, but they were there in truth. But yes, was that a consequence of the assessment as seen by the president ahead of the retreat? I will not speculate on that, but it's obvious that problems were there.
I'd like for you to let's take the areas of priority in our block, and I'd like to ask a question on the social inclusion and poverty eradication. What was the performance evaluation like?
Again, I would not be right to say that I can make disclosure as to exact grades or markings as were given. It is sufficient to say that there was reporting on all of the things that are going on, the social investment schemes of the government, the recent directive by the president, for instance, the earn power be increased by 1 million. Now, in addition to that also, that the president has inaugurated a poverty reduction council, which is chaired by the vice president of Nigeria. And from the appropriation this year, it's clear that we have the president has proposed more than 300 billion naira for poverty reduction, to be managed by that council under the vice president. So there was reporting on all of those elements. I disappoint you because I will not be able to say this one has passed, this one has failed. I think all of the discussions were, all the press people were asked to leave. Army band, ministers and government leaders, only the business leaders talk to. I must say that this itself...
Are there chances that this will, the outcome will be made public?
I believe that is the president to determine this, but it is sufficient.
Because that's the essence.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that this itself, the retreat has itself unleashed on the country perhaps an unprecedented, level of accountability.
Let me just put you on hold and introduce our guest, because he has few minutes to spend with us. Sheun Babalola is joining us via Zoom. He's the external assessor at the Ministerial Performance Review. Sheun, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure my colleague Kingsley will be probing his question to you in just a moment. Mr. Gara, please go ahead. Conclude your thoughts.
No, I was just saying that the retreat itself had unleashed an unprecedented, accountability, levels of accountability and transparency for the first time. For the first time in the history of this democracy, you had a situation in which government ministers had been called and put there, before the president and leaders of government and business, and in some cases the television cameras, and they were asked questions. So what happened? We asked you to go and do ABC. Did you do ABC? If you didn't do it, why didn't you do it? This has never happened before, and this was even the gentleman from the British and Commonwealth Office who did a presentation, who spoke of his association with Nigeria on these matters for 20 years. He said he had never seen this kind of situation. And on account of the appreciation of the impact and what it means to the nation, actually, the consensus at the end of it was that this process of holding ministers and government leaders to accountable should be legislated, so that it shouldn't be that it is that after President Buhari leaves office, that it will no longer be the practice. And that is for the president to decide and seek support of the National Assembly in doing this.
All right, thank you, Malam Garba Shehu. I'm sure that some former ministers who are listening to you, and if they are watching this program, probably will disagree with some aspects of what you have said. In earlier administrations, there were also reviews. President Obasanjo actually kick-started the whole idea of retreats for his cabinet, along with permanent secretaries, and he also set up the Honorary International Investors Council, I believe, that was carried on into the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan. And at meetings, whether here in Abuja or in London, there were also targets that were set for various ministries, critical areas, and those ministries and ministers were then asked to report and to, of course, account for any deficits and why those deficits took place. At those meetings were international investors, including local investors, Dangote and several others. But the point that you have made, of course, is noted as to the rigor that has gone into this retreat in getting them to account. Dr. Shamsuddin, who was in charge of national planning, also, of course, introduced the whole idea of KPIs. That's key performance indicators. Sheun Babalola joining us via Zoom now. We introduced him a while ago. Tell us, we're told that you're one of the external assessors at the ministerial retreat. What was your impression?
All right, thank you very much. And it's good to be here. So I think the purpose of the retreat itself is what I think I heard you talking about, which is a reflection. Another purpose is the lesson learning. So the reflection itself is about assessing progress and identifying, particularly spotlighting those areas where progress is not being made as it ought to. And then I think the richness of it for me, as both an assessor and somebody who sat there and listened to discussions, are the lessons that other people
especially outside of government, have to give government in terms of how they can fix those things that have not taken off the way they expect them to. So the lessons learning quite enriches the process. So it's not just only about looking backward at what has and what hasn't happened, but also how we can make forge ahead, with progress. What is going on in other parts of the world? The kind of external shocks that hit Nigeria and made our case very bad or worse in some instances also hit other countries. COVID, for example, depression or recession, and some people are bouncing back faster than others. So those lessons about what did those other countries do, what are they doing that we can learn from as a country, and so that our recovery, though it has, we have also bounced back, can be faster and affect people, citizens, in ways that they expect to be affected positively. So my overall impression was that it's a good thing. I think I heard you saying that assessments have been done in the past. This one, I think the difference or the uniqueness in it for me is the level of detail. So it's not just about general ideas. So there are areas that are assessed, 9 areas. There are about 302 projects or programs or policies of government that were assessed in quantitative terms based on annual targets, based on quarterly targets. Of course, any assessment is not 100% objective, but like you said, the rigor, and leaves very little room to wiggle away with what is not factual. So that was my overall impression. Thank you.
Can you give us an insight into how, because earlier on Malam Garba said assessment was purely scientific. Can you give us an insight into how scientific these projects assessed are in terms of appreciable impact on the people?
So thank you very much. So an assessment will be as objective as the rigor that was put inside it. The beginning of the process, which started, I think, in 2019, was definitely government identifying those areas that they needed to have an impact, and that's of course based on assessment of what citizens, the areas who were suffering most. This is about focus. We have so many areas in this country that need attention. And so the government needs to prioritize, and government needed to focus. And a lot of committees were set up and that reviewed all of those areas. And it came down to 9 priority areas, which I believe maybe might have been mentioned, but just to mention a few: stabilizing the macroeconomy, achieving agriculture and food security, ensuring energy sufficiency in power and petroleum products, improving transportation and other infrastructure, driving industrialization, improving health, education, productivity, social inclusion. I heard you talk about social inclusion, fighting corruption, of course, and very, very importantly, providing security for all. You would see that in all of these areas, these are areas of impact and many times of urgent attention. But it's not just sufficient to make those promises. It has to come to concrete terms. So you start talking about the scientific part of it, as you did mention. Is translating those things, those priorities that are like promises, translating them to actual action requires you to identify what policies, what programs, what projects will bring those things to pass. So those projects were used to form what was called a results framework. So it's just like a child goes to school and these are the subjects you've got to pass: arithmetic, English. So those areas were broken down into actual projects. Targets were set, annual targets up to 2023, broken down to intermediate quarterly targets, so that the ministers will know what they're aiming for at every point in time. They can plan around that. So that was the first stage, which is what was called the collaborative results framework. Collaborative because you see we have 28 ministries with the Office of the Head of Service. All of them are contributing to these 9 priority areas. So it has to be collaborative. because what security does affects agriculture. What agriculture does affects the GDP. So all of those things were factored in. The second stage were bilateral sessions with ministers and permanent secretaries. So they are.
Oh dear, I do hope we'll re-establish connection with Seun Babalola. Technology fails when you least expect it, but that's why it's a machines. Okay, let me throw my question to Garibashu. Okay, all right, Seun, you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was the network. So I spoke about the target setting just to make it faster. Bilateral sessions with ministers to discuss those targets. And this is not by external assessors. These are by the Central Delivery Coordinating Unit in the Office of the Secretary to the government. So they have those discussions with ministers. Then the ministers on the third stage did their own self-assessment. So based on the data they gather from the work they are doing, they complete their own self-assessment on all of those targets that are set for the deliverables they signed on with the president at the beginning of 2019. It is after that stage, when all of that data has been brought in, that external assessors are called in to say, okay, this is the data that the ministries have provided. This is how far they said they've gone. These are the kilometer of roads that have been constructed according to the KPI set. These are the number of rail. You go check it out and see whether those things are really as they ought to be. So that's what we called the external validation. So it's only after that that a scorecard is developed based on those KPIs, and that's the scorecard that is presented to Mr. President and his cabinet members. So 302, you can imagine, projects, policies, and programs. This is how you are doing along these 302. These are the indicators that they are impacting, and this is how those indicators are looking. So that's how the process went.
All right, Seun, thanks. We'll still stay with you. One issue that we have often confronted in Nigeria's public space has to do with what has been generally referred to as the silo mentality, often the lack of synergy amongst MDAs, ministries, engaged sometimes in unhealthy rivalry, but there has been a lot in recent times to streamline the activities of ministries. But there are still some areas that you can perceive. There will be brushes here and there, often involving some of these very well-known ministries: science and tech, agriculture, environment, if not at the ministerial level, but usually at the level of the agencies under them. Who does what? Who's supposed to move somewhere? Some ministry will be under science and tech or agriculture when it's supposed to be under Ministry of Health. So did you get a sense of a conversation around these issues, and how therefore MDAs can work more collaboratively or shifted to more appropriate ministries or directorates?
Thank you very much. So that's really spot on. That was the observation. One of the, I think, 4 things that came out of the assessment that was done in 2020: the need for interministerial better synergy among the ministries, and everybody agreed. Everybody, the ministers themselves, the assessors, that was something that needed to close. Number one,
we're losing him again in the meantime, but I'm sure Malagaba Shehu. All right, Shehu, you are back on. It appears.
So I was saying that is a very spot-on observation, and that came out very clearly in the 2020 assessment. One of the 5 things that were identified as critical enablers. Everybody agreed that there was the ministries to work closer together. The ministers did agree, the assessors agreed. And so the president gave some mandates at that retreat then to enable the ministers to work together. In this assessment, the gap has closed a bit, but it's still an issue that needed to improve resource allocation. There were concerns still of few instances of what you just said, where some projects that are supposed to be in Ministry A are found in Ministry B for different reasons. the aspects of it that came in to try and also improve that situation was the legislative. One of the sessions of that retreat was an executive, legislative, and subnational collaboration panel discussion where you had some ministers, you had the leader or the head of the Governors Forum, which is His Excellency Governor of Fayemi. You had the leaders of the National Assembly, which was the Speaker and then the Senate President, discussing how better to forge that collaboration, because some of those things also have to do with appropriation, like you mentioned. They had to do with budget. So the House of Assembly and the Senate are involved to ensure that things are where they ought to be and to ensure that the ministries work together. Lastly, in the closing, which I'm sure that you would have seen, in the president's remark, that also came out. I think what he's asking them to do differently is what they call a quarterly priority area collaboration, something that brings all the ministries that are working in the same priority area together to discuss common issues and how they can advance the cause there. So I see things being coming out that are being done differently in order to close that gap. But it's a real issue, and because of resource efficiency, that gap must close much more faster. Thank you.
Sure, I'm sure this is our last question to you, since you must leave us. As we say, where do you think we have, of the 9 priority areas, where do you think we have the comparative advantage, as we say, or where have we made the most impact, and what do we need to do, to ramp up performance in the other gray areas?
Okay, so the assessment actually belongs to government. However, citizens themselves, sitting on the receiving side, they know where the issues are pinching them the most. And one of the things that the assessment brought out to government is to accentuate those areas and bring it to fore and say, fine, these are the major pain areas. These are the areas where things have improved. Let's say, for example, I'll give you some specific examples to that question. The growth rate of the GDP. So we were in recession due to COVID 2020. Now, I think for the past 3 quarters, there has been quarter to quarter marginal increase in the GDP, which is the economy growing. And compared to last year, the last quarter 2 released by the National Bureau of Statistics shows we've grown 5% compared to this time. Last year, we were about negative growth. So that's an area of achievement. However, on the other hand, we saw that inflation in quarter 4 of 2020, quarter 1 of 2021 was very high, getting up to 17%. So that is a red compared to the target of single digit that was set at the beginning of 2019. And so there's a lot of effort to try and balance competing and conflicting priorities, because the economy needed to be reflated. So the growth happened, however, at the cost of inflation that went up to 17%. Of course, in the past 5 months, it's now coming back down. So those are some of the areas where you see some positives, and then you see some negative. In terms of improving in transportation and other infrastructure, we are witnesses of the completion of the rail tracks and opening up of some of those projects to operationalization. So we see some positives there. Improving health, education, and productivity. So while there has been some gains, but there still is a lot to be done in releasing more resources to get to the primary health centers where the majority of Nigerians are going to be accessing. We also saw in the areas of achieving agriculture and food security. So again, while yields are up, targets are very, very close to being met in terms of yield, but we have deficiencies in prices. So prices also went up. So those are comparative areas where you see that some positive things happened, and then negatively prices went up. And then what it means is that government needs to make a lot of effort in ensuring that those food prices come down. So these are some of the examples I can give. There are so many of the indicators, but that scorecard is in the hand.
Sean Babalola, thank you very much for your perspective and explanation. I'm wondering if we could steal a couple of minutes more of your time, because I just wanted you to speak to aspects around the indicators. You've talked about government programs, policies, and projects. As you said, Malam Garbashew here in the studios has already indicated to us that the questionnaires were sent to the ministers, and therefore it was the ministers who ticked off the areas and then responded by returning them. One critical issue that often arises in terms of measurements of this nature, whether by assessors like yourselves or KPMG was hired, or even at transnational levels, World Bank or otherwise, one thing that oftentimes is missing, it has to do with, and it's subjective anyway, they say, look, national well-being or citizens' well-being. All of these programs, policies, and projects are not intended for just to be executed or to be carried out. Was there a sense in which there was a conversation around the nation's well-being and therefore the citizens' well-being, so that where you need to further mobilize citizens to actualize those policies, programs, and projects, it's a lot easier to write?
Okay, thank you, sir. So if I understand you well, because of the network, I think what you're trying to say is that how do we have indicators that are able to measure the impact of these programs on the citizens, so that we're not just discussing indicators at the macro level that are not translating into well-being and welfare of us, the citizens. Is that the question, sir?
That's right.
Okay, so that's very important. One of the aspects of the assessment, by the way, that I didn't mention is in validating those achievements or non-achievements of the ministries. There is effort made also to have the citizens' perspective. So to actually check, there are some that are easily verifiable in terms of rail, in terms of road, and those have direct impact on citizens' welfare. There are others that also can be verified. For example, prices. When you go to the market and prices are up, you know prices are up. There's nobody that can lie to you that the prices are not up. So those are also easily verifiable. And so when we talk about inflation rate, that's where it impacts. There are others that also welfare issues like security. The number of communities that are displaced and you were able to restore, those are indices that also measure welfare. So one of the value that external assessors had was being part of the definition of the indices themselves. So when that result framework was created, a number of the indicators were also subject to validation, to say this indicator will not measure what you are trying to, make it to measure. So it's not a perfect process here, because each time the results come back, we do ask, this indicator is not measuring what it ought to measure. Why not you use these other two indicators? Because those are the ones that will let you know that these things are translating. And then finally, there are some things that the impact is not immediate. So you train people, for example, you train teachers because you want to increase the quality of education. That is not going to translate in 1 year, perhaps, but there are more medium or longer term impact, because government should not only focus on immediate impact things. They have to follow a long-term development plan. You have to be doing things that will impact us in the long term. Railroad, these are immediate to long-term impact things. So while people are traveling on the railroad, but are they moving goods? Is it driving economies? Is it opening up places? So those are things that we get to see in the longer term. So it's not a perfect process, but we do try to make sure that it's things that are impacting on citizens, both in the short term and also in the long term, that we are measuring. I hope we're able to try and answer that question to the best of what this network and time can permit.
I wasn't issuing you a questionnaire, Shehu, so you have, of course, answered our question. You know, Claire, yes, I still, you know, I mean, Malagaba Shehu, we can detain him for much longer, yes. You know, but I would just, because Malagaba Shehu mentioned something earlier before we brought on Shehu, which has to do with the involvement also of the private sector. And I wouldn't know who amongst the private sector came, but I believe it should be the organized private sector.
You said KPMG?
No, those were the auditors. Those were the auditors,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, the assessors.
I imagine that the private sector participators would have come from the organized private sector. That will include the NESG, that's the Economic Summit Group, Manufacturers Association, and so on and so forth. And part of what we hear from time to time with regard to private sector operatives is to say, yes, ease of doing business has improved tremendously, but there are still bottlenecks. And then there are also intergovernmental issues in relationships that have not been smoothened. Malagaba Shehu, how much of this came out and what were the assurances for remedial action?
But please let me again put you on hold, and Shehu will need to leave us now. Shehu Babalola, we know you have a tight schedule. We want to appreciate you for the time you have given us onto this program. Thank you very much. Shehu Babalola is an external assessor at the Ministerial Performance Review. Shehu, you do have a good day.
Thank you very much. Have a good day too. Okay.
All right, Malam, over to you.
Well, the involvement of the private sector at the retreat is not at all at superficial level. The involvement, I would say, was neck deep, because at every level, you know, the interface was present. All of the panels, all of the discussions that were anchored, were held there, were anchored by leaders from private sector. And so therefore, they brought issues, they brought grievances of the private sector, they brought solutions. For instance, at a point, you know, it impressed everyone that the panel discussing the issue of housing, the anchor of the panel had some brilliant idea as to how the housing fund, which had enormously increased trillions of naira, that is, how it can better be used to provide housing for Nigerians. And the Minister of Works was not too proud to say, I'm ready to discuss with you. I'm happy to hear about this. So, and in all of the things that were discussed, when targets are set, they were not targets only for government. Questions were raised as to, okay, so the private sector, how much of this would you be doing? And so therefore, there is that synergy and the coming together in all of the elements. As I said from the beginning, so that because the country is owned by all of us, it's not just by government people who own the country. They are part of it, and they are part of the solution, and they are accepting to be there.
All right, Malam Garba Shehu, thank you. Let's again pause it for a while and take some commercials. When we come back, we'll continue. This is Good Morning Niger and the network service.
President, engineer, and project supervisor of the second Niger Bridge project. The second Niger Bridge project is a project that has been conceived for a very long time, but it has finally come to life during this present administration. This project has a lot of socio-economic benefits and it has impacted positively on the lives of the host communities, both in Anambra State and Delta State. The people are very happy. The host communities, they partnered with us because apart from the social benefits, indigenes are also employed on this project. We can see how their lives are being improved.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
A new edition of TV Guide is out exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Manchester City return from the international break with a tricky tie against Burnley at the Etihad Stadium. Will they get their desired victory? Find out this Saturday when Manchester City take on Burnley on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have Malam Garba Shehu, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. Malam Garba Shehu, well, in terms of outcomes of retreats, what did you find as the optics, body language, first of your principal, that is the President, because we understand that he sat through the proceedings, and then of his cabinet members?
Well, it's clear that this is something, as I said from the beginning, that is unprecedented in terms of the level to which it has been brought, it has been taken, and the fact that that the President had determined from the beginning that the consequences will. So everybody was conscious of the fact that they had to be at their own best.
The best.
Yes. So going forward from here, our expectation is that, one, that the President inaugurated the dashboard for monitoring of projects as they are ongoing. Each ministry would be there, present, and on the TV screen, the President will be seeing all of the elements. What are you doing today, and how far have you gone on given assignments? And as Sheung had disclosed, of course, the quarterly meetings on all of these 9 points agenda that had been itemized. Now, the ministries that are bundled together, that are bandied together around each of the 9 issues, would meet quarterly. And the reporting will be before, first among themselves, and will be before the President. So there is the urgency to ensure that between now, the balance of 17 months is optimally utilized to ensure that promises made are delivered to Nigerians without failure.
I'm going to ask you about the nature of the consequences you talked about earlier on. In view of the fact that some of the issues that have hindered maybe performance in some areas were not entirely the fault of the drivers of those ministries. What would be the nature? Just don't tell us, just give us an idea. I know you would want, just give us an idea of the consequences that probably, the tracks.
Well, for some maybe the timelines have been such that are too close for comfort, and new timelines have been demanded of all of them. So on each count, what are you going to do? For instance, on matters of primary health care, and there's this concern that the nation is driving excellence towards excellence in the tertiary health sector, and that at the lower level, infant mortality, all of these things,
high.
So the thing then is, so what are you going to do about that? When are you going to? And it is very obvious now that before the year runs out, there will be the coming together of everyone in the health sector. This is talking about the state governments and the federal government. We must agree that these are acceptable, high rates, high levels of deaths, high birth, mortality, and all of these things. We have to find solutions and redirect resources. Now, some, as I said, it is that they've not been funded to do EFG of all of the elements they want to do. So then we find the government. Government has to find the money. If the government wants to deliver, then funding must be, And there are also such other areas of matters of security, for instance, where we would obviously expect that, something about, everyone kept talking about intelligence sharing and availability as a sine qua non for successful battle against that banditry or terrorism and all of that. Some things will happen in that regard. You said consequences, whether they will come in form of consequences or in form of new ways of doing things. But certainly the president was copiously noting, and it's very clear at the end of it, of course, the reports will come to him, and that will be a decision.
Okay, this is, by the way, you need to clarify this. Well, we know. Twice now, you have said for the remaining 17 months of the administration. Are you using a different calendar, Malam Garbashel?
What are you talking about?
I would imagine that it's 19 months. You have said 17 months twice. I would imagine that it's 19 months. Next year is still available, which is 2022.
12 months.
12 calendar months.
12 months.
Okay, 5 months in there.
5 months.
Okay,
unless you are fast forwarding, and we still have 2 months.
Well, it's a clear indication that this is an administration anyway that is conscious of its time limit.
That's right.
And there is absolutely no wish or desire on the part of the president to exceed that time limit. So,
all right. No, well, thanks. Either to not to exceed, to abbreviate. Well, fine. I mean, as I said, that's, by the way, that's a crack. Now, there's something that was also mentioned in the course of this conversation, namely executive legislative relationship, and then the federal and sub-national relations. That is intergovernmental. One of the symptoms of the sometimes unhealthy relationship between the federal and subnational entities is indicated by what you see in primary health care, ordinarily a responsibility of subnational governments. But we don't see much traction. Federal government comes up with its own policies, and it takes quite a while to pull the subnational entities along. It's only in recent years that we have seen a higher subscription rate to the UBEC counterpart funding by state government. So what were the takeaways in respect of, say, federal, that is intergovernmental now, federal and subnational relationships, before we get to the executive legislative aspect?
Well, they start with the cabinet, the leadership of the Nigerian Governors Forum throughout, and they also made their own presentations. It's an opportunity then to say, you know, these are clear lines that divide our responsibilities. The states are closer to the people, and they deal with people on an everyday basis. The government at the center is at a level that is, you know, I don't want to say floating, but certainly not as directly involved with the people and so on. And it is clear that they want to see that they are being invited, they're being taken along, and you know, if you give us responsibility, then give us the funding for it. I mean, there are mandates that are there, issues of security, and then they don't have control over instruments of state, police, and all of these things. So it's very clear that they want a slice of the action. Funding for mandates that are given to them, but they are unable to do because they have, they don't have. So all of these things are matters that will be discussed. Are they matters of revenue sharing? Are they matters of sharing of responsibility, dealing with the police and all of that? Again, notes have been taken, and I'm sure that there's a clear understanding that no, this cannot be, the job cannot be done by one one institution of state. Everyone has to just be there.
At what level of discussion, you talked about, you know, a meeting of states, federal and others, you know, in the health sector. At what level of discussion? Because there is a presidential committee on health reforms,
yes, that
you know, which is supposed to come up with, you know, framework both for the federal, states and the FCT. So at what level of discussion will this one that you have talked about, is it like a summit or what?
I believe it is a summit, because this is the minister's response to all of the things that were said about, particularly the degenerate state of primary health care in the country, and the need for, as you said, the responsible, you know, institutions of state governments and all of that to do their own part. I believe that talking about the committee headed by the Vice President, I guess that's a long-term thing also, to set a vision for the future for the country. We have a now problem, and I think that Minister probably wants to address those issues of the moment without much ado.
All right, Malagaba, thanks. The Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Sage Anire, actually had indicated, even when he was guest on Good Morning Nigeria, I believe, that the summit on primary health care will take place sometime next month. That's November. Now it's December.
I believe that.
All right, so once they're able
that's good.
get all the stakeholders together, they can then move ahead. Just what were your own impressions, in addition to what else that you have indicated, going forward? Because right now, I mean, the clock is counting down. Are these realizable goals and objectives? It's legacy time, as the saying goes.
Well, as it is now, I think that if I read the mind of the president correctly, and all of the participants, I think that everyone was happy with the outcome of the retreat, because we looked back and looked forward. And looking back, there's a sense that there's the better performance, better delivery by the second term administration than you had in the first term. And this were also supported by numbers supplied by the assessors, which had given the administration an overall, you know, score of certainly something very respectable. I don't want to specifically say this number. So everyone is, as you said, preoccupied with what to leave behind. It's a legacy situation, and the government is conscious of its commitment to the people, to deliver key infrastructure projects. The president has given definite, especially those under the presidential initiative on infrastructure, which, this second Niger bridge, Abuja Kaduna Expressway, the railway, Kano, Abuja, the east-west road, and all of these things. So yes, I think that we're in good shape to deliver very well, and security. Look at how much improvement has come to the space now, especially with the arrival of this new equipment, the aircraft, and all of that. Place is becoming quieter. So hopefully, by the time we go into next year, preoccupation will be about politics and succession. Certainly not about security and infrastructure, which should have been delivered earlier than now, and was not delivered.
What is? I'm going to ask you two questions in one. First, what is the federal government's own response to areas that are, its own faults? I know that. Yes, what's government's own response? And then two, if you look at the directives, given to the cabinet members and permanent secretaries, and the choice of words of Mr. President, I'd like you to tell us, evaluate how Mr. President's impression of the performances of the ministers. He used the words, redouble your efforts, ramp up, deliverables. He gave marching orders to the secretary, to the government of the federation, to have quarterly, meetings and all that. So, if you aggregate all this, what does it tell you about the president's impression of the ministers? Yes.
Well, as I said, the president is determined to leave a legacy. And sadly for him, the administration was distracted by the unfortunate emergence of the pandemic, which had taken away resources and the time and the energy from the direction in which he wanted to drive the country. So we would expect that ministers would have heard with both ears that this is what he wants, and that they're ramping up and ensuring that we deliver properly is achieved.
I was just wondering, Malam Garba Shehu, we had indicated that at least the cabinet minister will be part of our conversation this morning, and we have one of them just joining us for the conversation. Usually he's prompt when he's our guest on Good Morning Nigeria. But today, I want to speculate that he probably overslept on account of the tedium of the two-day retreat. And he's also, of course, heavily involved in the implementation process of a very important piece of legislation that has been passed recently. Let me join my colleague to welcome the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Timi Pre-Silva. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, my pleasure indeed. Yeah.
That's right. I hope my excuse on your behalf is tenable.
Oh, not exactly. Actually, I had an engagement very early, and somehow it clashed.
It spilled over.
Yes, exactly.
Into our time. Yeah. Well, Malam Garba Shehu was taking a number of our questions. You were an insider. But just give us your impression of the two-day retreat. Was it worthwhile?
Oh, it was very worthwhile. A lot came out of it. One thing that came out of it was what the consultants themselves noticed, that we have achieved a lot in this administration, which is not known out there. And in fact, they advised that we should do more to educate Nigerians, to communicate our achievements across all ministries to Nigerians, because they felt that what they saw in the course of going through with the ministers and of what they actually saw on ground when they even went round was baffling to them, and that they believed that Nigerians did not know that much and that we should do a lot more to communicate. What that event of the past 2 days presented to us was for us to be able to sit down together. You know, even as ministers, everybody is ordinarily working from his ministry. So you do not know what is happening in other ministries ordinarily. But when you sit together and you begin to hear your colleagues and you see what your colleagues are also doing in their various ministries, then you have a complete picture of what the government is doing. And that was why it was quite good that what happened in the past 2 days happened. It helped us to really have an overview of what was happening. And frankly, we all came out quite happy that we have done well. The consultants scored us high because for the first time, ministers were given mandates from the very beginning. And of course, you can now assess them based on their performances on those mandates. There's a basis for assessment. So you have 9 mandates, for example, that are given to your ministry. So where are you on all the mandates that were given to you? And that was the assessment process, which I believe has not happened in any other administration, and we are quite happy. And our hope is that this will continue. Subsequent administrations will take up from here and continue with this tradition of assessing ministers' performances, going through the mandates and actually determining where they are on all the mandates. I think that was quite innovative, and it was quite satisfying.
Let me ask you.
I spoke on this earlier when Malagar Bashir was speaking, but I won't repeat it. Maybe Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, who was the minister in earlier administrations, would have the opportunity of helping to contribute to growing this culture and clarifying issues.
Yes, okay, Kingsley, I wanted the minister to give us an insight into, in terms of, for the Ministry of Petroleum,
yes,
they identified benchmark areas.
Yes.
Where did you, because we were told that there were highs and there were lows in the Petroleum Ministry. Can you just give us an insight?
I don't know whether they were lows, but I can tell you that they were highs.
There certainly were lows, because we were told that 30% of our foreign exchange is spent in importing fuel.
Yeah, we have 9 mandate areas in the Petroleum Ministry, and we have ticked all our boxes. Every mandate that was given to us has been achieved. Some are ongoing, which is what you talked about. For example, if you're talking about the refineries, which you are indirectly referring to, of course, the rehabilitation of the refineries have begun. Unfortunately, this is not a magic wand that can just make the refineries get working the next day. So there is a process, and you are aware that the process is on. So that's why people will say, oh, maybe that's a low. But for me, that's not a low, because it is a process that has begun already. Then the next area where people say, oh, creating 100 million jobs. Yes, that is an overall target, not necessarily achievable within the tenure of this administration.
It's a 10-year program.
It's a 10-year program. And we have contributed significantly also. With the Train 7 work going on, there is a lot of jobs created. With the rehabilitation of refineries, a lot of jobs created. So those were only the areas where we did not score 100%, I would say. But on all other scores, we scored 100%.
In terms of mainstreaming domestic use of gas and renewable energy, how far do you think we have?
We've really started it. The basis is already in place. The foundation is in place. Now, our job is to build on that foundation. You know that last year, the president rolled out the auto gas. And of course, we promised the deepening of household gas usage as well. But there are a few issues that are being looked at. I remember it was on this program I talked about the conversion kits that needs to be brought in for a critical amount of number of cars, and of course a critical number of dispensing stations that need to be built for the process to be kick-started. That process is on. You are aware that the central bank already giving 250 billion naira loan to people to actually people have started accessing at least people have started applying to build these facilities. That process has already begun. The process of also building the micro distribution centers that would take gas to the local people has also begun. And also the process of appropriately pricing gas has also begun. There are a few issues now with gas pricing, which we are looking at. We are very aware that there are, but it's not for us to decide. Gas is not a regulated commodity. So it is not for the government to decide the price of gas. But when we see that gas prices are going up in the market, it is also a responsibility of government to intervene. So we are looking at how we can intervene. Now there is a major dilemma. One is to say, okay, the importers of gas are saying, look, take out VAT for us, because it is this VAT that is making the gas expensive for us. But the other side is saying, no, if you take out gas, if you take out VAT, the reason why we introduce VAT on imported gas is to protect domestic producers of gas. So now we have to balance it properly. You can't just...
The domestic production isn't meeting demand.
Exactly, but you still, whether they are meeting demand or not, you still, as a responsible government, need to protect your citizens. We have invested in production of gas within the country. So now this is the balancing act that we're doing, but we're going to get, we are having meetings with the association and the gas association, and then I'm sure we are going to get a land.
Very quickly, because there's a few seconds. We taking advantage of your previous experience as a state governor, the issue of the relationship between the federal MDAs government and the subnationals was one that we learned also came up. How can this be better maximized?
I think, what we will say is to institutionalize that relationship. During this administration, I think the relationship between subnationals and the national government has been quite
Honorable
excellent.
Minister, I'm sorry. We are 9 on the dot. We must go. But you will promise us, what time do we have you on Good Morning Nigeria?
No, any other time you ask me.
You will. It's a promise.
Yes,
it's on live TV. It's a promise. All right. All right, Kingsley, you get a sign off.
All right, so on that note...
KPIs had been there before.
Yes.
What difference this administration is making is accountability is being taken to a higher level. Project monitoring under the president has never been seen before.
Okay.
Thank you very much for correcting me. No, he has always been operating at the national level.
Honorable Minister, it is a precision business. We are short on time. Thank you very much for being our guest. Thank you very much for being our guest. That's it on Good Morning Nigeria for today. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Do take care of yourselves and Kingsley Osadolo.
Bye-bye from all of us here.